Hey, it's Dave Wyman, Football 101. Not a lot good to talk about after that Ram loss. Seahawks got to get it right, though, especially in run defense. And let's take a look what's been happening to the run defense over the last couple of weeks. The Rams, first of all, 240 yards, 44 yards rushing. Todd Gurley ends up getting 152 of it. And then the week before that, Leonard Fournette went for 101. And they were actually able to keep the Philadelphia Eagles the week before that under 100. And that was one of the best rushing teams in the NFL, second to Jacksonville. So now this is why you got to get it fixed. You got Dallas coming up here. They're the number 3 running game. They run at 137 yards a game. They run it 30 times a game, but they also have one of the best averages, 4.6 per carry, which is also number 3. Zeke Elliott is coming back off of his suspension, and he's missed 6 games, but here's what he's done in 8 games. He's number 16 in the NFL, even having missed 8 games, 783 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. 4 times he's rushed over 100 yards. And so I thought I'd draw up this kind of weird looking grid here just to kind of look at, because what's been happening in run defense, and you kind of have to coordinate how you play blocks and how you play gaps with your D-line and your linebackers. And you can't have holes width-wise, but also you can't have it depth-wise. And so sometimes, you know, when you have guys flying upfield and then guys coming underneath blocks and things like that, then it creates big, huge lanes for a guy like Todd Gurley to run in. So basically, you know, what you want is, you know, if you're taking on blocks, you know, where you end up, you want to kind of look like this. This is the end point here. You know, if you can get a stalemate, you're maybe a yard or 2 off, which isn't bad. But, you know, this is kind of where you want to be. And you can see that they're all kind of at the same level. And it's also about controlling your gap on the right side of it. But you're getting a level where it's kind of a fence. You can't really run through it. What's happening, and instead what I'm seeing on a lot of these plays, is that you'll have something that looks more like this. They're ending up here. Maybe sometimes they get stalemated. Sometimes this guy will run through here, and now you have all these huge lanes that are going both ways. And so, you know, instead of just holding that, you got guys flying upfield. Sometimes you get a double team. Sometimes you see a guy that takes a shot and he's up there. So now not only do you have problems this way, but also this way. And I thought that's where Todd Gurley really exploited the run defense. And, you know, it's one of those things that you just, you know, when we talk about gap control, that just means taking a guy on and making sure that that side of the player is your gap and you can control it. And so that's been one of the reasons why they've had so many difficulties in the run game over the last couple weeks. All right, let's take a look at a play. It was the very first running play of the game. With 13:36 in the first quarter, the Rams had just taken over after a fumble by Tanner McAvoy. And right away, first play, you saw where some problems. And if you can just kind of imagine that grid that I just drew there, you had some guys getting upfield and some guys not. And so, and really where it happened right here was right here. And really, if the end would have just sort of maintained leverage there, he would have been in the gap right here, and then Bobby would have been in this one, tackle would have been in that one. But what happens is this guy comes up and puts a block here, and what Garvin does, he goes upfield that way, and then the end, the block comes here, and if he would have just sort of maintained the front side, which would be there. And I talked about how you want to keep, so in this example, he'd be keeping his left shoulder in the gap, and then his right hand and his right foot free here. But what he ends up doing is coming underneath there. So the guy's got him basically walled off there, and what you have right here, it's 2 guys in 1 gap. And so, and then, you know, you had this guy maybe get stuck here. Sometimes we get run through on this. And so the play starts off this way and gets everybody going that way, but then he's got a huge lane right there. And that's just one little move right there. And sometimes, you know, you can go around a block, and I talk about that a lot, going underneath or around a block. And that just means kind of going the easy way and not taking the guy on. And so he should have had his nose right here in this gap, but instead he chose to go around, and sometimes you see these guys making plays, they just weren't. And Todd Gurley, so fast, and that's kind of one of the reasons where, you know, it looks pretty simple, and that's the thing in the NFL. In college, I noticed this: if you make a mistake, maybe half the time, maybe a third of the time, the opposing offense or the opposing defense, which side of the ball you're on, depends, they find it maybe 30% of the time. In the NFL, if you make a mistake, you go to the wrong gap, you drop the wrong way in coverage, they find it every time because they're pros, and that's what happens, and that's what they did. And I think this was off of a lot of film work. So Seahawks are going to really need to not only, you know, not go flying upfield, but also just be really disciplined about staying in your gap if they have any hope of stopping Ezekiel Elliott. I think they do, and I don't want to say this is an easy fix, but these guys weren't getting killed at the line of scrimmage. They were actually, you know, they're physical enough to handle it. It was just a matter of a lack of assignment. So for that reason, I think they can get that fixed, and hopefully they'll be able to keep Ezekiel Elliott under 100 yards.